What is the nature of reality? Some basic universal principles upon which to build enhanced comments on transitional material. Handbook for the New Paradigm Extracts. Copyright. Copyright sign. Leading Edge International Research Group. The number of applicable principles increases in stages as one progresses, and proficiency is increasingly necessary as one pursues experience in densities outside those in which organic bodies are used as vehicles for experience, where the object of thought directly manifests in reality. The learning of these principles and their application allows for evolvement to the next level where there is more to learn, apply and create within experience. Some basic principles which are reflected in all realms of reality structure. Principle of allowance. Releasing control and manipulation of beings and experience. Principle of attraction. What you give is what you get, like attracts like. Principle of intention. Placing intent in creation of new experience. Principle of harmony and balance. That which manifests when the others are applied. Principle of allowance. The principle of allowance is the most difficult of the three active or dynamic universal principles to accept as necessary and to practice. It is essential to understand the principle of attraction in order to apply the principle of allowance. The composite of thoughts, opinions and attitudes of each individual generate the experience patterns of living. Through the flow of daily experiences, these are filtered through this composite of each one's total collective experience. In this way, the pattern or matrix is in a dynamic and fluid process. When attitudes and opinions are deliberately programmed within a limited set of rigid guidelines, the activity level of the total pattern of experience begins to slow. The key is the word deliberately. This means that the guidelines are imposed, not by the individual through knowledge experienced into wisdom, but by the beliefs imposed on the individual by those he/she considers outside authorities. The pattern of each individual as a whole attracts to itself life experiences that resonate in harmony with that pattern. If a person desires something or some experience that does not resonate with that pattern, it is difficult, if not impossible, to attract it. Two divergent patterns cannot blend cohesively. By honoring what is, the principle of attraction is invoked. The principle of allowance reflects the release of the need to control. Through allowance changes the perception profoundly. It allows transcendence from responsibility for others and recognizes the personal choice of releasing them to their own personal decisions, rather than bringing forth feelings of separation. This blessing process brings forth an experience of a form of love that has blessed them in a way that will have profound effects on their life. In adversarial situations, a change may take several repetitions, but it will bring change. The principle of allowance is more difficult to perceive because of the degree of control exercised individually and by outside psychological, including religious, and technological mind manipulations. It is indeed difficult for most of mankind to actually have and/or maintain a sovereign attitude. The opportunity to live life with freedom of choice and be allowed to observe and learn from the results of those choices is rare. To declare the desire to do so is incorporated within the desire for a new paradigm of experience. The practice of discernment is part of the application of the principle of allowance. The discerning individual will find it necessary to logically assess their attitudes and opinions. Are they judgmental and blaming of others? Are there always reasons that the self is not responsible for what is going on in the life experience? If so, then denial of personal responsibility is blocking all progress and the cycle of victimhood is established. Until such time as this can be looked at with logic and the pattern discerned, it remains locked into the experience. It is necessary to desire to change these basic controlling factors. Look and listen to what is thought and said and purposefully change the basic pattern. The results will take time and diligent correction in order to see the changing pattern in experience. However, the pattern must change if the intent and purpose are held in focus and thought and words are changed. Statements made can be restated in a positive mode. This then changes the first statement. Thoughts can be rethought. Simple as this message content is, there are few if any who cannot find application of these ideas in their daily experience. The practice of discernment is an ongoing focus through many levels of experience. Looking within at attitudes, opinions, statements and thoughts often reveals interesting and applicable causes. Each is encouraged to apply these suggestions in an ongoing fashion. Discernment is further practiced in considering and choosing what information is true. It is a wise practice to set up the discernment process by stating in thought that one wishes to discern truth before listening, watching or reading. In that way the mind discards what is not true and retains what, if anything contained, is true. What is truth for one is not always truth for another. Each pattern of experience sets up a different ability to glean what is necessary to know. It is encouraged that this suggestion be used when reading these messages. Allowance involves much more than patience. Patience has its own vibration and it's much closer to tolerance since patience deals with allowing time for changes to occur. Be patient, fall is coming, so to say. Allowance invites patience by bringing to mind that advancement brings positive change. Patience alone does not. Call allowance what it is. Patience is a whole different vibration. Calling allowance patience is like calling a hurricane breezy. Principle of attraction. Simply stated, like attracts like. The principle of attraction magnetizes the object of the focused thought that was sent out into the creational field of energy and it is returned to the point of origin. When the point of origin is vibrating at the slower rate, it appears within the sequential time orientation to manifest very slowly. It is essential to understand the principle of attraction in order to apply the principle of allowance. The composite of thoughts, opinions and attitudes of each individual generate the experience patterns of living. Through the flow of daily experiences, these are filtered through this composite of each one's total collective experience. In this way, the pattern or matrix is in a dynamic and fluid process. When attitudes and opinions are deliberately programmed within a limited set of rigid guidelines, the activity level of the total pattern of experience begins to slow. The key is the word deliberately. This means that the guidelines are imposed, not by the individual through knowledge experienced into wisdom but by the beliefs imposed on the individual by those he/she considers outside authorities. The pattern of each individual as a whole attracts to itself life experiences that resonate in harmony with that pattern. If a person desires something or some experience that does not resonate with that pattern, it is difficult, if not impossible, to attract it. Two divergent patterns cannot blend cohesively. A child is born into its family situation, or lack of one. In innocence, except for inherited genetic coding, it is totally influenced in its experience by the same thoughts, attitudes and opinions of its parents until it is old enough to begin to attract some of its own experiences. Eventually it graduates to its own field of attraction, but the pattern of its matrix is already present. The direct influence of the family is present to the degree of acceptance of those thoughts, attitudes and opinions by the maturing individual. The physical attributes present also contribute to the attitudes that develop during the maturation process. Parental, teacher and peer influences all play their part. More layers of influence are present. The thoughts, attitudes and opinions of groups input to the individual matrix. Identities within ethnic, neighborhood, city, region, state, nation, etc. add their influence. Next, add the conscious and subconscious programming by radio, TV, movies, newspapers, magazines, and online information. Each of these composite patterns is received and filtered through thought, opinion and attitude to create the individual resonating matrix. As the overall life experience for a major portion of the inhabitants of the planet becomes measurably more complex, the matrix designs have become less defined. The resulting confusion and overwhelm being experienced has become more intense, reflecting this lack of matrix definition. This appears as self-absorption as each attempts to stay focused within the vagueness of their indefinite pattern. The resulting feelings of overwhelm and lack of definition allows for the planners of dark deeds to tighten the noose of creeping enslavement literally before the eyes of the victims without their notice. Those awakening are incredulous that the situation has reached this ludicrous degree. Principle of intention. In the case of the existing game, it requires the total inclusion of those involved. It does not matter what the thoughts are as long as they support the plan. Complicity involves believing the intent of those involved is for the good of all. Perhaps now you can see the power of sympathy for the afflicted ones around your globe. This supports the victim consciousness that is required, for it is complicity in disguise. Do you not consider them victims of war or natural disaster or poverty? You must take a deep breath, accept your part in bringing support to their feelings of victimhood. They too have responsibility in the creation of those situations. Your sympathy will not solve their misery. Your deliberate choice to create a new paradigm of experience will do that. Withdrawing your focus of attention and bringing it toward creating a new experience will bring the change about far more quickly than repeatedly sending aid while considering them poor innocent victims. Does this sound hard-hearted? From our point of view, it is hard-hearted to be part of the creation of these horrendous situations in the first place. You must deliberately choose to implement your desire to create a whole new experience for them as well as yourselves. When you choose to place your intent beyond the play perceived by the five senses, and place it instead into the creation of a new experience, you are withdrawing your consent and support of the experience in which you no longer wish to participate. You are using the second principle of the universe, If you simply focus on change, then expect chaos within your life, for that will be the change you create until you decide upon some more precise idea of what you want in your experience. The process of how this works involves a universal principle called attraction. The key is not in acting out resistance to the current apparent situation, circumstance, and apparent events, but in focusing on the desired outcome. The act of holding the desired outcome within the emotions of desire and idea of the outcome is the application of the principle of allowance. This is the most difficult of all of the principles to apply, for the events that are happening will still reflect the expression of the established process until the focus of the desired outcome is beginning to influence the total picture. Thus, it is important to find positive attributes in the current experience to appreciate and honor even as a new paradigm of experience is desired. This is the paradox that is found throughout creation. In order to have what is new, it is necessary to honor aspects of what is present as a stepping stone on which to stand before creating a new stepping stone to continue the progress. To honor something does not make it necessary to carry it on into the next phase. Again, it is necessary to point out that the grateful heart reflects a feeling aspect that resonates with the principle of attraction that brings into experience more for which to be grateful. It is the way it works. The sharp observer notices how many people and several groups alternate between being victims and victimizers. This tactic favors taking on the role of victim first to appear justified when they become victimizers, which is the position of control over others. Once they become victimizers, they will not hesitate to flip back to victimhood if their position of dark dominance is threatened. From Matrix v. Gold Edition, victim consciousness is the epitome of the negative experience. It draws through the principle of attraction like energy, or in other words, it draws situations that exploit that consciousness. There are few within the modern societal norm that do not know at least one man or woman that in the scenario of several marriages repeats the same pattern of abused-abuser relationships. The pattern of the victim draws the abuser, whether physical or verbal, no matter how many times a new partner enters the picture. This is especially true if the relationships quickly follow each other. The pattern of experience is held in place by the thoughts, attitudes, and opinions that are at the basis of self-awareness. The victim desires to be rescued. Someone or some event must come and change their life. If, however, there is time taken to consider and contemplate the elements of the situation resulting in changes of attitude and opinion, knowledge to wisdom, the pattern of experience can change. The tragedy of religious teachings of an outside primal source as a personified rescuer is that it not only instills a victim consciousness, but also feeds it. A victimized personified deity hanging on a cross as a status of veneration draws to those believers what they venerate, the victim experience. If poverty is venerated, poverty is attracted. If hard work is venerated, then life will be filled with hard work. If killing is venerated, then death is attracted. Whatever the dominant focus of thought, attitude, and opinion is will influence the overall matrix and dominate the attraction of experience. There is a great difference in the application and concepts of wanting, believing, and knowing. Wanting only creates more wanting. Believing only says that one thinks the process will work, while knowing accomplishes the intention. It is the degree of difference that the actual experience of seeing the application work that allows for the knowing to become accepted and applied with ease. The first attempt at application must be reasonable and believable in order to reach the knowable level of acceptance. The nuances of these concepts are important to contemplate. The understanding that deliberately applying the concepts of these principles may not be an easy task in the beginning. Thus, to choose a single application with which to test the theories is of primary importance. It is the habit of men to want everything at once and to fail to take a new process slowly and deliberately. The learning of the application of the principles is much like stringing beads, one at a time. What is challenging is to hold the concept to be manifested clearly in mind without adding nuances to it that complicate and slow or in fact halt the entire process because of a necessary detail. Again, thought thinks and often creates a far more grand application than the finite mind can conceive. The energies of the individual begin to change as intention and the ability to hold an intention clearly strengthens and holds firm. It would be expected that one or more successes in manifesting a desired outcome would firmly integrate the process into the experience. However, that does not seem to be the case. Most find that old habits and assumptions do not disappear from the experience easily. It takes many successes to raise the acceptance level to create a habit level for natural manifestation. There also are the instances when casual thought manifests as the subconscious applies the principles to these casual thoughts. It is possible to bring into experience instances that apply to others that were never intended. Therefore, the statement of highest and best good for all concerned is the best possible safety insurance and would be wisely added to all intentions to manifest a desire. A consistent sprinkling of this statement within the continual mind chatter that fills the void between meaningfully aware thoughts is also wise. In observer status, you do not move against the game, but you most definitely can point out the game's mechanics to other interested observers. Share what you see. Remember, you don't escape by fighting the game, but by removing yourself from it. Remember what the word observer means: a non-participant in events, but someone who takes note and evaluates. From Matrix v Gold Edition. To meaningfully apply the principles of attraction, focused intent and allowance requires purposeful desire to bring something into real experience. The simple experience unhampered by unnecessary add-on details is possible to manifest quite quickly, depending on the clarity, ability to focus the intention and emotional energy that adds impetus to the creational process. The degree of knowing is the final ingredient in the mix. It is difficult to determine the difference between believing and knowing. Again, it is an easy, almost effortless application of the desire. Just as you know you can move from the chair to the door, there is an application of the doing of it that is totally without doubt and a knowing of exactly where one is going, but no thought as to exactly what the muscular and other bodily efforts are that are involved, or what may happen during the process of arriving at the door. It is also necessary to continue to know one is going to the door all the way to getting there. Losing the focus may allow one to end up in the kitchen and wonder why they are there. In the same way, it is not necessary to delineate what is necessary in order for the desire to manifest. It is only necessary to know what the desire is and to add the minimal amount of focused cooperation that is necessary to set the process in motion while holding the intention of experiencing the desire. It is often mentioned that one needs to be sure one really wants what one thinks is wanted. Most can think of casual thoughts or statements that have broad experiences with consequences not expected. The creative aspect built into all is listening and takes those thoughts and statements literally, especially if the momentary intention is sincere and supported by emotional impetus. While the explanation seems complicated, the application is quite simple. It is a matter of simply doing it simply. The complicated part is when doubt slows or destroys the effort entirely. To begin by choosing a desire that is totally contrary to the current experiences to set up a formula for failure. To attempt to move from poverty to affluence with one desire is sure to fail. It is best to begin with something small and simple. It adds to the process to act as if the desire is already happening. Place an empty hanger in the closet for the new coat. Make space in the cupboard for a new dish or pot, etc. Then be patient and wait expectantly. In considering the picture from a linear event observational mode, timing seems inordinately important. Within the understanding that a picture of wholeness can be filled in by events and circumstances that do not appear to be happening in a sequential mode, it is difficult for those participating to ascertain and comprehend the larger picture, without understanding accomplishments as they fit within the bigger picture. It requires great self-discipline to hold the desired outcome firmly in intentional focus. It is because the increasing inflow of newly awakening awareness requires those of greater understanding to constantly redefine the purpose and the intent. This then in turn refreshes and renews their own focus. From an energetic pattern point of view, this provides for a spiraling of greater available dynamism. For those who are observers, you need to look deeper, much deeper at developing events situations in order to see the roots of the issues. From Matrix v Gold Edition, Principle of Harmony and Balance. There is a fundamental call within each for balance. The lack of ability to choose experiences freely causes a distortion of energy pattern that brings intuitional discomfort in searching to change that feeling. This need is then led into unending streams of unfulfilling pursuits by those who would change the destiny of this planetary experience. Those changes that will lead to the establishment of balance and harmony receive input of supporting energy that strengthens and hastens the process. In conclusion, it is in learning to rely on the self-awareness to perceive where each is within the application and understanding of these principles that underlie all of manifested reality, that will replace the programmed need to look outside to some power greater than self for the gift of permission to do something or to fulfill a desire. It is up to the self to attain that desire through the application of those principles for the self and in cooperation with others. Thought properly intended thinks and acts through to completion if properly held in mental and emotional focus for positive change. Focus is lightly held by the mind. If you intend for your body to move from one room to the other, it simply does by acting on your intentional motivation for it to do so. It acts entirely within the universal principle of intention into manifested action. It is not even a conscious thought. It is an intended action, and it happens. The subtlety of this example demonstrates the power of intention that is lightly held but is yet confidently expected to happen. It would be well for this example to be contemplated and carefully understood. Through the coordinated and integrated action of the first three principles of the universe, the fourth principle of harmony and balance will manifest into reality. This is not to say that there are no polarity experiences within the principle of balance and harmony. Indeed there are. However, there is not the extremes of experience leading to great imbalance. These are merely lessons of discernment that demonstrate knowledge lived into wisdom. The universal principles, when properly invoked, can bring about wondrous changes in situations that otherwise would remain stuck within their current motion and momentum. This remarkable process results in complete rearrangement of energetic forces that are in motion. This causes a period of chaotic energy shifting but can happen quickly if it is released, allowed to complete the process without the input of imposed restrictions to its motion by the intender. By continually adding thoughts to the process on how the principles must bring about the desired focus, it is this necessary release allowance that is the key. The educational process has brought mankind many blessings, but it has also allowed for great limitations. Internet. A simple internet search will bring you to a place where you can download the Handbook for a New Paradigm. If you are interested, search for the title name. The desire to rescue the suffering will be great, and examples of victims will be within victim consciousness. The observer mode of allowance, while the new paradigm focus manifests and brings the ultimate solution to their plight, must be held securely at the forefront of the conscious awareness. If dropped, it must be quickly picked up. Looking at or recalling a meaningful symbol is the easiest way to regain the focus. Will all who resonate and commit be able to retain their focus? The success of the project will depend on the consistent and the persistent. Each must look within themselves to determine if their evolvement and genetic adaptation is such that a commitment of this magnitude is possible, plausible, and noble enough to find out if the traits of character necessary are available or not. It is certain that each one that commits will find out. When the time comes for each of you to stand forth in your own truth, it is then that you will know how committed you are to creating the new paradigm of experience. Until such a crisis time, you will not know who and what you are. Each desires to be the most it is possible to be, but desire and actuality are two entirely different realities. Thus, it is time to turn attention from the planetary focus to the personal realm. The mode of experience as perceived by humans on this planet is a reality that limits the ability of most to encompass an overview of the current happenings. When this is further limited by the currently normal linear method of discerning what is acknowledged as believable, the distortion disallows any ability to comprehend an accurate picture. The medium misinterpretation and omission of accurate information further complicates the situation. It is from this vantage point of the human dilemma that the cognizant ones can understand their fellow inhabitants. Each can remember they were just as unaware and uninformed about the current world's circumstances. Once the distortion is acknowledged, then it becomes apparent that somehow a clearer image of what is really true is necessary in order to begin to change the momentum that is threatening to steam. Real-world progress has influenced and motivated the desire for real freedom to consciously evolve. While these comparatively few individuals endeavor to reach out and inform their friends, relatives, and associates, it is their intent to do this that brings about the results. Their intent draws to them the appropriate contacts and situations that allow for these important exchanges of information. This permits each to comprehend their own new picture of what they are able to perceive. Both emotional and logical constraints influence the understanding that each then uses as a basis for further interpretation of information. These either extend or limit the newly identified picture. By comprehending that a false and distorted representation has been purposely overlaid to cover the true situation, what becomes important is the decision as to what to do about this revelation. It is easiest to just play the waiting game and watch what happens. There is a difference between watching and observing. Watching indicates a total withdrawal that has no intentional reason for becoming aware other than curiosity. Observing is done for the reason of using the knowledge gained for an intentional purpose. While you are encouraged to cultivate the practice of being in the observer mode, it is also important that it be understood that this is not an inactive role. The keen observer is cognizant of the scene and his/her place within it, as well as how it coincides with previously known information and its effect on the larger known aspects of the current reality. There will, in times to come, be opportunities to make appropriate input to situations that will change the total outcome of an entire well-planned event. Just as removing a pin will cause the failure of a vital piece of equipment, a simple logical statement can change an attitude or perspective that affects how or if a person will act within a given situation. In a moment of realization, the entire picture of understanding can change.